Welcome back to WRPL, All Things Consumed. My name's Ben.
And I'm Steve.
How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing good, Benjamin. How about you?
I'm doing well. So today we are going to talk about two of our favorite things, movies and video games.
Yeah.
We're not talking about video games that were turned into movies.
Oof, the worst.
But we are talking about the hypothetical of movies that should have gotten a video game by now. What are some of these great titles that just we don't have a video game counterpart to? There's a million Spider-Man games and X-Men games, and back in the day, there used to be a movie tie-in for everything that would always release at the same time. I remember back when in '99, the Phantom Menace game came out like the day before the movie, and if you played it, you could have gotten movie spoilers before you saw it, which is just kind of not a thing anymore, or at least they don't. One of the reasons why we don't get these types of games anymore is because of spoilers getting released, and when you want to make a game, you need to do it way in advance. It takes even longer than the movie itself, and if you're trying to be as exact as possible, you're going to get spoilers because they got to make cutscenes and voiceover and all that stuff. So we just don't see it nearly as often, and it's a shame because there's tons of weird ones like Platoon. The movie Platoon has a Nintendo game. It's so bizarre, some of the things that they would make for what was considered like a kid's toy.
I mean, I would love to see certain movies get adaptations, but I mean the main reason I think they stopped doing those kind of things is one, because they're always rushed because you're trying to get it out on time.
Yep.
And two, they don't really care about the quality of the game. They're just like, Iron Man's coming out, put a random bot thing in that can shoot lasers and it counts as a game. And it's like, no, like there's a reason I think they stopped making it after Thor. I could be wrong, but I think there was an Iron Man game, a Captain America game, and a Thor game. And then it was just like, all these tanked. We're not going to do this anymore.
We don't need to do it. But then sometimes you get successful ones like the X-Men Origins Wolverine game. That one had in its favor, they were already making a Wolverine game, and it just so happened, this movie is coming out as well, let's tie it in together. It was kind of a no-brainer. But when you have...
That's the one where he was going like berserk and stuff,
and
right?
it's like super bloody,
bloody,
and his flesh is ripping off and growing back. It's a great game. One of the best X-Men games, for sure. But then you have things like Superman Returns, and there's going to be a new Superman game to coincide with this release, and it got pushed back, and then by the time it's out, it's bad anyways, and nobody cares anymore.
Yeah, I think that's the last time I bought a game based on a movie.
That?
I did buy it. When the movie came out, I believe it was... Oh, God, I'm so good at this usually.
Yeah.
I think Superman Returns was 2005, so I was 15 at the time, and I was like, Superman game? Cool. And I remember flying around...
Not Superman Returns. Wait, no, it was Superman Returns.
Superman Returns,
right. I'm getting my...
Yeah, and so maybe the game came out a year or two... Whatever, the point is...
It got pushed back for sure.
So I remember playing that game because I was like, I want to be Superman. And I remember the flying being kind of fun, but everything else about the game was bad. And it was weird that you were a character who just like couldn't die. Like I would just get hit by a kryptonite blast and kind of like fall from the sky a little bit, and then my health bar would go right up to the top, which like in a way it's like, I can't die in this game. That's kind of fun. But at the same time, it's like, what's the challenge here?
Yeah, that's the hard thing to do, Superman. Not only do you have to get the flying down, but he's also completely invulnerable. He's stronger than everything. How do you base a game around that when you're pretty much playing God mode the whole time? And they haven't quite cracked it yet, but I'm sure we're going to get there very soon.
Have you seen the Unreal Engine footage that some like fan did of a Superman game where he's
like going through like the freeways and stuff?
Going through like the city and everything? Yeah. Looks incredible.
Looks great.
Like that's what I want to see.
And I think like we can get a game where they do nail that flying, but then how do you do the fighting where it's not just punching bank robbers?
I think there was a point where the people who made the Arkham game said like, we're doing Superman next. I don't know if that's rumor or like, we want to, and that just fell, whatever. But I've been hoping for a awesome Superman game for a long time. I think that's just the problem is like, how do you do a game where someone is essentially a god?
Yeah, you really have to master that combat that isn't just a button smasher or like the Arkham games. You almost, I think, need to make it more puzzle-like. Like you're fighting a huge robot, you got to hit the certain points with your freeze breath and things like that. Yeah. It can't just be punch, punch, punch. That's real boring.
Yeah,
but
I think there'd be a point where you have to be Clark Kent, like doing the Mary Jane stuff. It's like, oh, you got to investigate. You got to like,
please no.
And then that's when you use your superpowers or something, or it switched to Lois Lane. You have to break up the story a little bit. It's like, oh, because we can't just be the punchy guy the entire time. But I think the other problem is, well, how fast do you make him? If he's almost as fast as a Flash, it's like, but he can't be too fast because then it's like, literally no one can stop him, so there's no challenge there.
I think if you do something where that super speed is a fast travel mechanism, like if it is just Metropolis that you're fighting in and it's open world like Spider-Man, you put your little waypoint and then it shows you zip. I think flying, you would have like little bouts of quicker speed and you can slow down and float, but I don't think it's like that's where you pick and choose your battles. Like what can you actually do in this game? And I think you make the super speed fast travel.
Fair enough. And I think like if that game ever did come out, there might be people who are like, well, in the comics he's actually more like that, but like at the same time I think the creators of the game would be like, yeah, but at a certain point you just need to make the game fun. And so like we nerf some of his powers a little bit just to make it playable. Or and you just go like, yeah, that's fine.
It's the same thing with like when they do the Mortal Kombat versus DC or Injustice. Like, well, if Superman's there, then he's just going to kill them all. And their right around is, well, everybody gets an injection thing, so now everybody's as strong as Superman, or we put a thing on Superman and now he's as weak as everybody else. And it's like, whatever. But
we're not talking about the Superman game.
We're not talking about comic book movies we want to see. What are some movies that should have their own video game? Some of these will already have video games, but maybe they're not the game that best represents what the movie is about, or it is just something to churn out. Like my first one that I'm going to start.
Great.
Dredd.
Okay.
Dredd is an amazing movie with a simple premise of super cop going through a building, taking out guys. Lots of gunplay. The Dredd video games that we have are like first-person shooters. Makes sense. He's a shooty guy.
Right.
You do first-person. But I think, especially if you're molding it after Dredd 3D, as it's technically called, that first person isn't necessary because you don't have these vast corridors. You're in a tower. So I think more of the cover-based shooting of a Gears of War would work really well for Dredd. But I don't want to limit the game to just being get to the top of this building, kill the person, and the game's done. That would almost be like the Kingpin construction sites in Spider-Man. Okay. You would have an open world, and then you have these buildings of this is a drug lord, this is a mob boss, whatever it is, and you go level by level taking them out, and then you claim it, and now that block is safe, and you drive around stopping crime as Dredd. Now I don't know the most about the comic character in the world. I just know it's a much bigger world than what we have seen in the movies with like Judge Death and things like that. So I think you make this just a GTA Days Gone open world. Okay. Riding around on your motorcycle or car. I don't know what he drives.
I think it's a car.
Is it a car? Okay.
Let's go with the car.
Yeah, sure, why not? And you can stop things on the street, and then you have these missions of going into buildings and clearing them out. I kind of pictured him on a motorcycle.
I think he does have a motorcycle now that I think about it,
Oh, man.
He has both.
Sure.
He has the tumbler from the Batman. It's like, it's a car, then it can shoot out of a motorcycle. Why not? Yeah.
And so it'd be, definitely cover-based shooting is your main thing with lots of different types of guns and ammo. I think that it's got a huge world to pull stories from, and I'm just surprised I guess maybe if the movie did well, they might have gotten around to it, but...
And I mean, even if you didn't make it necessarily open world, if you made that initial tower just huge where you can go like, okay, I'm at this floor, but I can go back... I can take the elevator, I can whatever to go down to the first floor, and the first floor is where you have your market, and it's like, okay, I can...
I've secured this area now.
There's different... like every level has different stuff on it, so like even it's like, so it's not all apartments that you're cut, because that's going to get boring.
Sure.
But there's different places where you can go like, okay, I can interact with something. This is where I can go to upgrade my gear. This is where I can go to heal, because there's some dude selling like pharmaceuticals, like black market stuff here.
Would Judge Dredd let you? Would he use it?
Once again,
that's why I think you need to kind of open it up, because he is very black and white about the things you're either doing good or doing bad. I think that would be a fun game. You could probably do that, but I feel like it would get really repetitive and you have to make it a little bit bigger. So if you open it up to all of Mega City 1, there's just more there.
And obviously people taking futuristic drugs could offer you some different sort of combat enemies. With, what was it, the drug? It was just called Slow.
I don't remember.
Oh, well, either way, watch Dread, because that movie's awesome.
Yeah, it's really good.
Okay, I like it.
Right, so what's your first one?
I'm going to just go kind of piggyback off of your choice. Mine is somewhat similar, but not set in the future. It's the Raid franchise.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty funny.
The first movie also set in a building, but I'm going to go Raid 2. We're going to kind of this game takes place after the Raid 1.
Okay. Maybe the Raid 1 could be your tutorial.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I was thinking too, or just like you fight your first boss fight of the game is like your tutorial is fighting Mad Dog essentially. And then the rest of the game is sort of open world, and with games like Sifu and Sleeping Dogs that I've talked about on the podcast, where it's GTA but with like kung fu aspects to it. And so you're the undercover cop, and this gives you the storyline to sort of invest yourself into the character, but you have the kung fu Muay Thai or no, is it called Muay? It's not Muay Thai. It doesn't matter. The
martial arts.
Yeah, martial arts of that country, and you just kick a ton of fucking ass throughout the entire game, and you uncover. I'm not saying you're gonna play the character from the Raid, and because maybe you're not doing the exact story, but maybe you're a second undercover cop who's like in adjacent with that guy, and you can run into him, or you can help him complete missions, or you're just involving yourself with another crew who has connections to the main storyline of the Raid 2, and it's just undercover cop in the big city fighting crime, and just tons of fun just with combat. My version of this is just a very combat-based game. Okay. And obviously you can interact with stuff, you can pick up knives, you can
use the environment
to your full capacity. Every time you punch somebody, you can throw them through windows, you can smash their heads on stuff. Like, I wanted the environment to be just as much a weapon as your hands, but obviously you don't have to. You can just use your hands, and you're the most just badass guy on the force, or second most badass next to the guy from the Raid. Yeah. So that's my choice. It's the Raid.
Yeah, good choice. All right, my next one is, I'm just so surprised this never got any sort of video game tie-in, but Kill Bill. Kill Bill is my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie. It's just so much fun. The second one's not nearly as good, but I still love it a lot. This actually almost got a game. There was a little bit of footage released. It was the crazy 88 fight. But, of course, what you can see is like you're taking on 2, 3, maybe 4 guys at once. Nothing too crazy. I imagine this being, especially in certain parts like the crazy 88 fight, it'd be more of an Arkham combat style. But I'd also want it to kind of play as like Ghost of Tsushima. Okay. Where you could have different stances with your sword. I think you should play through both movies, and we'd hit all those beats with all of our main characters she's taken out, but I would like to do more flashbacks to when she's being trained, and that's how like you would learn new skills for your next level. You do a black and white flashback, you do a little training montage with
Pai Mei.
Pai Mei, yes, thank you.
I don't know why I remember Pai Mei, but I don't remember the lead character's name
from Raid. Yeah. And then you would have a mission where it's something from the movie, and then at the beginning of part 2 she's driving in her car and she's talking directly to the camera and she's explaining what happened in the previous movie. We would cut to one of those every time she's talking about a mission that the Deadly Viper Assassination Squad would go on in the past. There's a line she says to Bill, "If you would have asked me to jump a motorcycle onto a moving train, I would have." Let's see all the things when they were still a team and they were kicking ass, and we get to do some of the things that we haven't seen in the movie, and then we flash forward to the things we do see in the movie. And I would change the ending not to be just a fight sitting at a table being like a quick time event. I would like to do Quentin Tarantino's original idea of them fighting on the beach underneath the moon. So you would have, I think, 2 different kind of fighting styles. You'd have your Arkham style for the big fights, but there's a lot of close quarters, hand-to-hand combat in those movies, and I think the fighting style that a lot of wrestling games have with grappling and using your environments, maybe kind of hard to blend those two, but Kill Bill, why not?
Yeah, I mean the problem with that game is you definitely would have to expand a lot on the lore and finding ways for her to fight other people, because essentially all those two movies is just back-to-back boss fights, and you're kind of, except for the Crazy 88 fight, you're missing all the stuff in between, and it's just because, I mean, she's not purposely trying to kill other people. She's just like, these are the 5 I want. Everyone else is in my way. It's just going to get cut down. But I like your choice, and I think even if you didn't want to change the ending, you could still have it where she does the 5-finger palm thing, but you still have that scene where it's like, the game plays out. It's like, and Bill's like, okay, well, let's go to the beach and talk this out, and then you have that big epic fight, but no matter what you do, you lose, and then it cuts back to where they're in the seat, and she's like, okay, I know I can't go there.
Sure.
And so then she does the fight. So you can still have the ending of both. But I think that's a good choice just for the sake of, there's 5 built-in bosses, and the only other thing I would say is that I think it might be a fun game as like an arcade style side scroller.
Sure.
Because imagine you're just going through the building, and then the Crazy 88 slowly come at you, and you have to Ninja Turtles, X-Men game from Simpsons era. So that could be fun. Yeah.
Sure.
Good choice.
All right. What's your next one?
My next one is a new movie that came out recently. I'm going to go with Dune.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I'm no expert on the Dune lore in the future books, but obviously there's a bunch of them, and I think there's plenty you could do with this world, and especially after seeing Denis Villeneuve's, if I'm saying that correct, vision of this world. It's so visually appealing, and the technology, flying around one of those dragonfly
helicopters.
And you have powers, and having the shields, and you see these glimpses of these epic battles in the sand and running away from sandworms. I think that there's a big adventure here where it'd sort of be like Horizon Zero Dawn meets Mad Max in terms of just scope of open world. Okay. And obviously we could travel to different planets too, and we could see some interesting stuff.
Sure.
We're going to the war. We're going to war with our Harkonnens. I'm not saying you play as
Paul
Atreides. Maybe
I think you would.
I think you would, yeah. Or at least
you
hop around with other characters.
Absolutely.
Because maybe you jump into you play as Idaho.
Duncan,
Idaho, yeah. And then you just mow down a bunch of those dudes. I think that there's a ton of fun stuff you can do set in this future world that we haven't seen yet, and then maybe even go further past these movies into the crazier and crazier stuff that I know kind of comes down the line there. I think it lends, if I'm doing an open world game, I think Dune is the next best choice.
Okay. I the only problem I can see is, especially if you don't go to other worlds, it would be like a lot of Mad Max the video game. It's just desert, and that's kind of dull. You got city, you got desert, and then you get the desert people's land, and it's just that's very brown. But I think there's some fun gameplay.
I think there's some fun gameplay there, and I think if you do the story right, it can be interesting, because I agree that the Mad Max game can be kind of oh yes, it is all desert, how visually exciting, the whole game is just yellow, but at the same time I had so much fun with that game that the atmosphere, the desert world didn't bother me. I don't know, I was kind of into it. The lack of visuals didn't negate my enjoyment of the game.
Okay. All right, I guess that's my turn now. So there's a movie that is fantastic and has not had a really good run for sequels or spin-offs or anything. And then it's not surprising that there isn't a huge gaming franchise based on this. But there is a game, but I think once again it was another first-person shooter. It's just so boring. To anything with a gun, you just turn it into a first-person shooter game. But my choice is Starship Troopers.
Okay.
great movie, really fun characters. It almost seems like it was a movie based on a video game already, with the different alien types and the fun weaponry.
Like, it seems like it would have came out around the same time as Double Dragons. Okay. It might have.
The movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, well...
I'm just saying, like, Double Dragons is something that's like, oh, they saw a video game and they turned it into a movie, where this seems like what you're saying. I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, they're not more than 5 years apart, I would say.
Right, yeah.
So I think this... I don't know if you've ever played it or remember it. There was a Capcom game back in the day called Lost Planet.
Never played it.
And so pretty much it's a planet called Eden 3, something like that, and it's going through its ice age. And so one of their big mechanics was you can't be in the cold too long, otherwise you freeze to death. So you're constantly running and gunning and looking for heat packs and shelter. That was one of the things that turned me off from the game, because I felt like I was constantly just watching this ticking clock of, oh my god, I'm going to freeze to death, but there's all these guys shooting at me. But it was a third-person shooter game where you fought big bug-like aliens on this planet. And also, just like in the original novel, the Starship Troopers were in mech suits. They weren't necessarily ground troops, and that's something you absolutely could put into the game, because the Lost Planet also had mech suit parts in it. I just would take away the frozen planet. And I think by the time they got to the third game, you had desert and jungle and things like that. Like, they kind of moved a little bit away from it. But they had really big bug monsters and small ones, and it just seemed like it's perfectly fit for the Starship Troopers universe. There's a lot of crazy bug monsters already in the movie, and what a great well to take from to make even new creatures. Fighting a brain bug would be interesting, and all these little guys crawling at you. I just think that would be an excellent game.
So my number 3 is a franchise that has... Well, I looked up on Wikipedia, and it has had a bunch of games, but really only one, I think, has been successful, and it was it's an N64 game that sort of was one of those games that kind of like defined the genre. When they think of like N64 games, is like, I imagine, one of the top 10 that always comes up on the list of like favorite games. It's like part of a lot of people my age childhood. I'm gonna go with James Bond. Yeah.
Bond has had a ton of video games.
But the list I saw, I don't remember any of these, other than there was one that came out a few years back where they did From Russia with Love, where based off of the Sean Connery ones. But obviously, GoldenEye 007 was the only, like, I think, successful, huge.
Yeah,
James
that was
Bond
the
game.
biggest one for sure.
Which is just, I mean, you walk around and shoot. There's no like real meat there. But with today's games and visuals and technology, I think I'd like to see it as Uncharted, but with James Bond. Because it's like you can travel the world and go to these exotic locations. You can have weapons and gadgets that sort of help you out in various, puzzle solving scenarios, or you can take out guys in your own. You can go stealth. You can go
guns blazing.
I'm basing this game sort of more off of Daniel Craig's world, not necessarily that you are Daniel Craig and you are playing these exact replicas of the movies, but just going. I think that the Daniel Craig versions really brought the action and stuff in ways that the old ones didn't. The older ones are kind of like, some of them are kind of like hokey and a little silly. But, I mean, you have a character who can, drive speedboats, can go in foot chase sequences, who can drive cars, who can, crash planes. You can really do anything with this and make it cinematic and have these crazy moments of, like, dangling off of crumbling buildings and everything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it lends itself to these epic, Uncharted-like combat games, and it's a little bit more believable that this super spy would gun down all these people versus an archaeologist who's killing
for sure
an entire country's worth of people. And I think you can make it fun without, relying on magic or whatever from obviously that Uncharted is leaned on.
And he's just built for so many different gadgets, and you think it's a dumb thing that Q has packed this thing for you, but maybe it'd be a lot like Hitman as well, where you can either, you know, with your stealth and maybe the stupid thing that Q has given you does work in this level but not in another. And if you want to do this whole game through stealth, maybe you can, or if you want,
you could do it in a way where, okay, I want to play the game more this way. I go to Q's lab and then upgrade whatever gear I want this way.
Or you get to, like, he has all the gear. You get to pick what it is. Yeah. Maybe you bring that inflatable life raft, but you didn't need it for this one. But maybe you can still use it in a way as a distraction that it's meant for you to escape down the river. But if you inflate it in the pool while all the guards are watching, they go, oh, what's that? And they abandon their posts. Something like that.
And there's... you have a huge cast of characters you can pull from. You can have him interact with his buddy from America. You can, if you wanted to, do like dialogue options. Like, oh, you can try and seduce the woman, and if you seduce her in the right way,
you get the event.
No, you just get the information that you need to. It's like, okay, she's going to give me the code to this door versus me like knocking out this guard. Blah blah blah.
Sure.
Like, there's a ton of stuff you can do with that. Like, use his charisma in the way you play the game as well.
Maybe you don't have to knock out this guard. Maybe you can act drunk and he lets you stumble to the bathroom. How you interact with the characters depends on your outcome.
Yeah, and I mean, I was thinking of when I picked Bond initially, I was like, yeah, well, there's been a bunch of Bond games and yada yada. And it's like, so maybe I'll go Mission Impossible because it's essentially the same thing.
I'm sure there's plenty of Mission Impossible games.
There might be. I didn't look it up. But the problem I have with Mission Impossible, and it's like, I love the Mission Impossible franchise. It's great. But the problem I have with it is just like, I think Bond is so much more classy, and I feel like he, like, while the Mission Impossible movies you could argue, are more fun. I don't know. I think Bond is just such a more, like, that's a character you want to play.
Okay.
Like, for the past, 40 years or whatever Bond's been around, it's like men want to be him, women want to be with him. It's like, so why wouldn't you want to play as like the most famous spy of all time versus just this special agent Tom Cruise? So I don't know. I think yes, there has been Bond games, so this is my one choice that has had a history of games, but it's the one I think they haven't done right since GoldenEye 007, I guess. And what we can do now, and with the ideas that we're able to accomplish in games, I think I'd like to see a new Bond game that really, is the Uncharted of the spy franchise.
Yeah, and you can see a lot of those things where you got to chase down the train in your car. Bond, you could have your jet ski level, you could have your racing level, whether it's racing to shoot someone.
Because Bond's done it all.
Yeah, parachuting off of a mountain with an avalanche chasing after you. There's just so much that has happened in Bonds that would turn into really fun action sequences.
Yeah. And you'd buy them all because they're, he's the greatest spy.
He's the greatest.
He like, you've seen him do these in movies. It's not like you're necessarily treading new ground, but now you can play it.
And I think there is even a game that is all the Daniel Craig movies in one game, but there's, I think so.
Really?
Yeah, it's just kind of like the main beats from all of his
There's
movies.
No way that's good, though. If I've never even heard of it, there's no way that's good.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not. Cool, yeah. So my next pick does not have a video game franchise, and I can understand why it doesn't, but I think it's perfect for what I have in mind. It's The Purge.
Ooh.
I don't love the Purge movies. I really don't even like the Purge movies, but I always really like the concept of the Purge. It's dumb. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and they don't set the world up properly for it to make sense, but whatever. So I imagine this game to be a lot like... Did you ever play Manhunt?
No, but I'm aware of Manhunt.
So for those who don't know what Manhunt is a criminal wakes up in this kind of bad part of a city that's kind of only nobody really lives there. It's kind of abandoned. It's kind of like almost an Arkham City, but without actually being a prison. And this pornographer has kidnapped you. Oh, you were on death row, and he gets you out and says, "Hey, I'll spare your life, but you're gonna make snuff films for me." So the whole thing is you're sneaking up behind people, and if you have a plastic bag in hand, well, you can choke them out and kill them. And there's like 3 levels of how violent it is. Or if you have a shard of glass or a baseball bat or a crowbar, and you just take all these people out one by one, get through the level as stealthy as possible, take these guys out, move on. So I imagine the Purge,
awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty messed up, and it got a lot of flack for doing these like up close shots of people. Like the crowbar would go in and he'd pop their collarbone out, and like some horrific things. But it was like PS2.
I was gonna say it was PS2, right?
PS2, so it's like it's not super graphic by today's standard. Like Mortal Kombat is more disgusting than this, but it was
so this game was ripe for a remake then.
Exactly, and they made Manhunt 2.
Okay,
but it wasn't as interesting of a story. And whenever they did the kills, it would get kind of staticky and fuzzy, so you wouldn't see the worst parts of it because everyone complained about it. So I imagine the Purge game, it would be probably a 12-hour game, and maybe it would play out in almost real time.
Okay.
And I like it. I imagine very much like Last of Us, where you have these open areas, but they are kind of self-contained arenas. And you would have to, you're Joe Schmo, and your wife's car broke down across the city.
Sarah Schmo.
Yeah, Sarah Schmo. Joe and Sarah Schmo. And you have to go save her because the roving gangs of neon lunatics are going nuts.
Sure, yeah.
You know the story. And it would be kind of up to you of how do you get through these chunks of the city. And I think there would be a big emphasis on grappling and holding someone and trying to keep them muffled, and you have the choice of kill them or just take them out and don't kill them, and you'll have a meter of did you really take part of the Purge, or was this killing more of a justified saving yourself? And I don't know how much that would play into the actual game, but maybe it could be, you go full tilt and you're killing a bunch of people. Maybe you get certain upgrades for that. But if you're more pacifist, you're more silent, harder to find, things like that. You get
or if
your
you hit
skill tree.
You hit the max on your meter of murder, maybe you just kind of snap because you didn't want to be this way, and then so now it's either you lost the game or you can only just brutally murder people because your psyche is snapped, and now you're like, I'm full Purge mode. Yeah. I see why people do this, and then you murder your wife.
And yeah. Hey, why not? I have two different game modes for this, but so you can, grab someone, knock them out, drag them to a shadow, and take out all the people silently and stealthy, or hey, maybe one of them has a gun, and you just go out and you just shoot everybody you can. And one of the big things in the Purge is they set up traps. You go down an alleyway, and then here comes a big old swinging axe, and it cuts your head off. Well, maybe you can lure the guys into their own traps, and maybe they work, maybe they don't. Maybe you try to set it off on your own to distract them just so you can run by. And that's kind of the more stealthy pacifist side. But then we had a couple of the Purge movies that had, what's his name? Frank Grillo? No.
Yeah.
Is that his real name?
Yeah.
Okay. That's not his MCU character name, right?
No.
Okay. I know he's Crossbones.
Yeah. I believe his real name is Frank Grillo. Yeah.
I think you should look that up. just because that would make us look real stupid. No, I think Frank Grillo's his movie name.
No, his real name's Frank Grillo.
Okay.
Yeah, his name in Captain America is Brock
Rumlow.
Oh, okay.
Agent Rumlow.
Rumlow, yeah. All right, that makes sense. So he's in a couple of these movies, and he is trying to overthrow the government that did all this. I'm pretty sure, or maybe he's out to get his wife, whatever. But
who cares?
He's the gun-toting one, and he's going nuts. And I think maybe if they want to go with the morality thing and let you choose, okay, that's fine. Or this is a specific, you got to be stealthy, and then when you play as him, okay, this one's you could have a little more fun and just shoot people from some gears like cover fire. But I like the idea. I really love a lot of wrestling mechanics of you grapple, and then once you're in that grapple mode, do you do a high attack, low attack, medium attack, a high throw, medium throw, low throw? Grapple move, a suplex. Being able to kind of, maybe you grab someone and you're able to just kind of walk through the whole thing because you have a knife to their throat and their guys back down the whole time. Or you can take them and you push them right out a window so you don't have to deal with it. I think a grapple mechanic hasn't been utilized outside of wrestling games as much because I don't want you to necessarily, be punching people. If you make a noise, maybe you have some attacks. But almost like in GTA, the fighting's kind of weak. So you'd be like that because you're just a normal person. You're trying to throw punches, but this person has a machete.
Yeah, I mean, of all the things that GTA does, and like the amount of like GTA is huge, and you can do so much stuff. Their combat has always been the weakest part of those games, and it's like I don't know. But this isn't talking about GTA.
No.
Just a side thought.
But, so, yeah, you would just have these really fun encounters of these crazy different types of gangs, and you just got to get to the end. And if it is a real-time game of 12 hours, like, if you take too long watching the cycles of these people running their patrols just so you can be super, super stealthy, well, maybe you don't get to the end at time, and your wife is killed. Or you get there a little early, and you get to save her. I think... And you can do a lot of fun... close quarters things, like in the first movie is all set in the house, so maybe the fighting is more grappling and you're like shoveling it into walls and it's not necessarily punches and backflips and things like that.
Gotcha. Very cool.
I think it would be quite fun.
All right.
And maybe it could be an online thing where I'm the person that has to go, and then you have people who are just
I imagine there'd be a
nuts.
big multiplayer community there. Yeah. All right. Good choice.
Yeah. Thank you.
So we're in this sort of a similar headspace where my next choice is also a horror franchise.
Okay.
But in terms of how the game is played, mine's different. We've played some of the like Until Dawn, those kind of games where like you make choices and based on your choices the game changes and it could go any sort of way. But there's a horror franchise that I think has been underutilized and people don't give it the credit it deserves. But I think it's a great franchise. Is Insidious.
Oh.
Yeah.
For a video game, huh?
For a video game. In terms of like, it wouldn't be your typical kind of, like I said, it'd be the choose your making choices and like going through things and like things are popping up and scaring you. Like this game is just meant to scare you, and for you to be involved in the story. So I'm not talking about. I never saw Insidious: The Last Key. I'm not necessarily talking about that stuff, so I can't speak to that. But
I think The Last Key is better than Part 3, from what I remember.
But I was a huge fan of Insidious 1 and Insidious 2. I love The Further, and I think having a character who can like astral project into this world of the dead, of the demonic spirits, you can do a lot of really cool stuff with that, and jumping back, and you're teaming up with this paranormal team to save your son or save your wife or whoever. And then what blew my mind is seeing Insidious 2 and there being like kind of a time travel aspect to it, of just like when he was knocking on the door, when they heard the knocking on the door, and then it cut back to the first movie, and it's him from the first movie. I was like, that shit blew my mind. I was like, how are you, like, the reviews for these movies haven't been like universally great. I was like, these movies are fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And like the level of like how they, because I don't think that was thought out in the beginning.
No, it was probably just a creepy thing for Part 1, and then someone said, you know what would be cool?
Could do. And then, but once they connected those things, I was like, that's awesome. So I think if you could do a Until Dawn, House of Ashes, the other ones I can't think of right now that I've also, a Man of Medan, like this kind of, let's take some characters, send them to the astral plane and see what kind of weird, horrifying things that they can run into. These terrifying things that you've seen from the past, maybe when they're in their normal bodies and they're not astral projection, they like, maybe you have to like investigate something. It's like, okay, I remember something from my past, and you can like find remnants of information, and it's like, oh, if you read that, you know that when you go into the astral plane, like that's the event that's playing out here, because like in the first movie he's like walking through the house and there's like that family who's sitting on the couch, and then it cuts over and then like family's been murdered, shot in the head. It's like, oh, like there's info for that in the game, so you can sort of find all this information that leads to this mystery of like whatever your past is. I'm not saying you play as God, these
names.
These names.
Why do these actors need to have different names?
Yeah. God, and it's the actor.
Patrick Wilson.
Patrick Wilson, yes, thank you. It's not necessarily you're playing as Patrick Wilson's character, but you're just in this world, and maybe you even have other characters who go into the astral plane with you. So it's like, okay, we need to team up, and so now there's like maybe 3 of you, and you can switch between their
different skill sets?
They're not necessarily different skill sets, but it's like there's 3 separate stories kind of going on at the same time, and then you guys have to converge. And maybe your story over here doesn't work out and you die in the astral plane or whatever, and then, but it's like, so all three of you can survive, none of you can survive, that kind of thing. But I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff you can do in the further, and really scary imagery that you can do, and it's just a cool concept. And I think those games have been successful in like creeping me out at times when you and I have played them. So I think that would be a fun way to do that horror franchise.
Yeah, especially since a lot of horror films are very much what's going on, how do we find out, talk to the experts, and so the game would play kind of like a detective mystery where you're figuring out the clues of what the hell is going on. And it would be interesting to have, when you are in the afterlife, you do things that maybe show clues in the real world, like, oh, you knocked over, you moved this candlestick. Well, in the real world, you couldn't have moved that one to open up the secret compartment. But in the other world, when you knock the candlestick over, it allows you to do it in the real world. Something like that.
Right.
You affect both planes. And I think there are a couple of games like that, but they're slipping my mind.
And I mean, even if you're not, maybe you're the main character isn't some like bumbling idiot who doesn't remember his past, or is like, oh, I gotta get into the further to say, it's like maybe you play as the old woman from the first movie, and you're like, since that's kind of her thing, it's like she can see these things, she can send herself there. Like maybe you're a character like her who's like, your mission is to go in and save someone, or it's like, it doesn't have to be a parent saving a child or whatever. It can be like, oh, this is my job to go here and like pull people back, or to stop these demons from possessing other people.
Yeah, you could have multiple smaller stories where it's not a huge mystery, it's a smaller mystery, and then you figure out and you help those people, and then the next one's a little tougher, and so on and so forth. You don't necessarily have to make one story. You could have a bunch of little stories.
I just think there's a lot you can do with it, and it's a franchise that, like every horror franchise, the movies have gotten, I think, progressively worse after 2.
Sure.
And that's just horror movie making. Got to get that money. But I think that the concept of Insidious itself is really awesome, and I just am a big fan of the first 2.
Okay. I could see like kind of an Alan Wake vibe, maybe.
Yeah, I could see that.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, my last one is one I've been thinking about forever. I love this movie. I love this book. I love this manga.
A manga?
I know. I was turned on to some magazine was advertising the manga, and so I ordered it on Amazon, but I was dumb and I just ordered the original novel, and I was just like, damn, I didn't want this. I wanted the manga. Well, I guess I own it. I might as well read it. So I read it, and I'm like, holy shit, this is actually really good. Now I have to get the manga. And I had just moved recently, and so I didn't have many friends and didn't know anybody in the area. So I'd buy the first volume and I'd read it in a night, and I'd go to them all the next day, and I'd get the second volume. And they're not cheap. And I was spending, I think it's 12 issues, maybe 20. And I just went one after another. And by the time I got to like 12, I was just like, oh, I think I've spent like $120 on this in the past 2 weeks.
And the people at the store was like, this is the 14th day in a row I've seen this guy. Here, kid, just take it.
Just take them. And then I was hunting down the movie, and I didn't have a car at the time, so I was looking up locations of video stores that would have kind of older, more niche things, and taking bus rides across the city to only be turned down. Oh, we had one, and it's gone, and finally found one. Loved the movie too, and now it's a little more easy to find. They've had special editions for it.
Right.
But this is Battle Royale.
Royale.
Yeah, and have you seen the movie?
I have. I think I saw it right around the time the first Hunger Games was coming out, because everyone's just like, the Hunger Games just Battle Royale, blah, blah, blah. And it was a movie I had heard so much about anyway, because it was just like, in terms of foreign films, it's like the one that, kind of was able to cross into other nations and everything, because a lot of foreign films, at least at that time, were kind of, most people didn't want to watch them.
Yeah, you had to kind of be in that...
unless they were like Jackie Chan kung fu movies from like the 80s or whatever, early 90s. But yeah, I watched it, and I was pretty blown away by it. And then I saw the Hunger Games either shortly after or maybe right before. Like I said, it was essentially the same exact time. I was like, Hunger Games is good, but you guys need to watch Battle Royale. Like if you guys are comparing these two, Battle Royale is far superior.
Yes.
Just But I mean, in fairness to Hunger Games is a young adult
Yeah.
driven thing where this is like clearly an adult movie with horrible imagery, but just involving teens.
Yeah, and Hunger Games takes the story further than Battle Royale. Like this is one class that it happened to. Yeah, you're hopeful that our leads get out and try to change the world, but there's no indication that they actually will. And especially if you watch the second movie. Don't watch the second movie.
I've never seen the second movie.
Really bad.
Yeah, I mean, Hunger Games is like we're taking down the political system as well, but
they actually go and do it and fight the war. And Battle Royale is just kind of like, baby, let's try, and run off into the sunset.
But Battle Royale is awesome.
Yes. So for those who don't know Battle Royale, in Japan, a random class of 15 boys and 15 girls. I guess that's how they split up their classes anyways. They kind of even out the boy-girl ratio.
Sure.
So it's 30 kids. They think they're going on a field trip, and they all get gassed. They wake up, they're on an island, and they have to partake in a battle royale where they each have to kill each other until one is left standing. And they all know what this is. As soon as they wake up, they know, oh shit, I'm going to have to kill my friends, and only one of us is going to survive. This has been a thing for a long time, and it's how the government kind of keeps the population in check. You know, if you can't trust your classmate, your neighbor to be willing to kill you for their own survival, like, can you really trust them with starting a revolution against this authoritative government? So these 30 kids wake up in a classroom. They have bombs strapped around their neck, and they are let out, boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl, to go onto this island, hide, fight, do whatever you can to be the last one surviving. And everybody gets a backpack that has like a compass, a map, some bread and water, and then a weapon or a thing of some sort. Some people get an automatic machine gun. Some people get poison. And you just don't know what you're going to get. And then on top of that, on the island, there are sections. And every hour or 2 hours or so, a section gets blocked off and you can't be there anymore. And if you are in that location, your collar goes off and blows your head off. So it stops people from just like finding a good hidey hole and trying to wait out the whole thing. So yeah, that's your basic premise. And you have your friends and your boyfriend and girlfriends who maybe they jump off their cliff because they want to die together, they don't want to partake, and some who are just see as an excuse of finally I get to like unleash the terribleness that I've always had inside me and fight these assholes who I go to school with. So the game would be the island, and I think the thing that would make this different is every character would have 30 to 50 attributes, and it could be something as like how fast can they walk, how stealthy are they. Like, you know, do they make a lot of sound when they're sneaking through the grass? Can they climb? Maybe they're really good at climbing. Maybe they can't climb at all. Maybe some, you know, are easy to spot hiding in the tall grass, and some are able to stay perfectly clear. Everybody has these little attributes, and it'd be like 1 through 5, not to make it too difficult. And how they are affected by it and how other people see them.
So are you saying you can play any one of 30 characters?
Any one of 30 characters. So this person is, you know, really good at first aid and cooking food, but they can't hold a gun. Their gun sway is crazy wild. So if you play that person, well, maybe you don't really want to look for a gun to fight these people because the chances of you hitting are going to be a lot lower, but you're very sneaky and stealthy, and maybe you can poison the one water supply you find and take some people out that way. Or maybe you're super strong and super agile and great with a gun, and you just want to go in guns blazing. But every character would be completely different than each other. Some may be close enough, but then on an added layer on that, the backpack that you get is completely randomized as well. So maybe you get the guy who's really good with a gun, but you get the poison, or you get a rope. And it's like, shit, well, what can I do with this? Do I just abandon it? Do I try to use it? Or do I just go off my own skills and try to take someone else's weapon? And so I think it would be really fun as a single player mode, and you do a story and you play as your main 3. You would have an online mode where you get 30 people in a room and everybody's randomized. You don't get to pick and choose your character. And same with your backpacks. And then I think it would be fun to do, you can choose your whoever you want, because you want to try to get through the game with every character. Maybe you want the slow fat guy. Can I beat it with him? You know, his fighting style is terrible and he's really loud, but that offers so many different challenges to play this game and so much replayability. And I think you could also have like a creative character, so you make your own attributes. You know,
the secret 31st kid.
Yeah, and it would just, you go in and kill each other in any way possible, and I think you would have to get a really interesting combat system, because every meetup is going to be different. It's like, sure, this person can run away quickly, but this person, they may be able to run really fast, but they run out of breath, and so they could only run fast for a short amount of time, and this person you're fighting is a marathon sprinter, and so, well, how do you fight this person? And I know
now,
there's a lot to it.
Yeah, I mean, I like the concept, and I think there you could do a lot of really cool stuff with that. So in terms of the story, like when you pick your character, is there going to be 30 different linear stories? Like, you're pretty much always going to run into this character first, or it's like,
I think in story mode it would do that, where
Okay.
you come across the people that you do in the movie kind of naturally, and that would be a good way of just learning how to use your character. But if you pick one of the random characters or is randomized for you, you would just get, because everybody gets released every like 5 minutes or so everybody can spread out. Once you leave, you gotta go. You either maybe hunker down there, you gotta run and try to find a friend, and there's other games where like you can build friendships. Like in The Thing had a video game, and you had to try to figure out who's the monster, and it's like, do I trust this guy or do I tell this guy to fuck off? And maybe he can help you and unlock a door later, or maybe he's just lying to you because he's the Thing and he's gonna kill you when your back is turned. I think you could have an element of that, of, well, you know who your friends and allies are, but maybe because of their stats, they don't want to be your ally anymore, and they'll turn on you. You know, they'll shout out. Like, that could be a little thing. Like, you can make little sounds and draw people towards your friends and screw people over. And I think that'd be a real fun thing, especially online.
Damn, that's a good choice.
Yeah,
I like that.
I think there's a lot
I like
you can
that.
do.
That choice mostly for like the diversity of it, in terms of like,
you're not just playing Johnny Cool Guy.
Yeah, all the possible options you can do.
You could be anybody.
I mean, I think that'd be like a ton of work from a creative standpoint. But if you
like
pulled it off, I think that'd be a pretty incredible game.
Yeah, I think it'd be really fun.
Well, I wish we ended on yours, because I feel like mine isn't going to live up to that. So my choice is something that was snubbed at the Oscars. It's a movie I'm a big fan of, even though a lot of people, are kind of whatever about it.
Green Book, the video game?
No, but close. My choice is The Green Knight.
Oh.
Yeah, it's my favorite movie of last year. I was listening to a podcast where they kind of breaking it down some, and I knew we were doing this, and I was kind of thinking about it, and I was like, well, what if we made The Green Knight, but it was God of War with Arthurian legends?
Okay.
And God of War is one of my favorite games. Now, I'm not saying you necessarily have to be Gawain, but you're a knight in King Arthur's court, and you go around and you complete quests. And I mean, it's essentially Skyrim meets God of War. It's not necessarily so. It might not necessarily be so linear in terms of like, okay, your mission is to fight the Green Knight, but maybe that's just one mission you can do.
Okay.
There's the big war between Arthur and Mordred, I think, is his ultimate villain. But you run into all these like famous knights and characters. Like, you get trained by Lancelot. Your sort of mentor guide is Merlin, who might gift you with magical items. You can, get different armor and weapons. It's like, okay, well, I can eventually. Arthur dies maybe in this. And it's like, oh, who gets Excalibur? Maybe you're the first person who holds Excalibur. It's like, maybe I'm gonna become. Am I the king now, or do I have to slay beast? And it's like, especially with the Green Knight, how fantastical it is. I think most interpretations in film of Arthur's stuff is pretty so like, there's been magic from Merlin and stuff, but there's not like giants the size of buildings. There's not talking foxes per se. There's not a weird Green Knight until recently. I think it lends itself to history that we don't necessarily see a ton, and you can make it as fantastical as you wanted to, and have these giant, crazy boss fights like you do in God of War, but also maybe do small stuff. Maybe you run into that girl whose head was chopped off in the house, and you like have to go to the bottom of the lake to retrieve her, and then like when you do that, she gifts you with some power that you can use in other things.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because the Green Knight is essentially a morality tale. It's like, am I worthy of the role of knight since I haven't done anything honorable? And he constantly fails in that movie. It's like maybe you fail in certain regards. Did you ever play Fable?
No, it was an Xbox game.
Yeah. I only played Fable. No, I played Fable 2 and 3, and Fable 2 is awesome. But a big part of that game is like you can do good things, and that affects how the game's played, and you can do bad things. It's like not necessarily that you'd be a bad knight in this game, but you can either choose the noble thing to do, which might make the game harder for you, or you choose the unnoble thing, and then maybe it helps you out, and you can keep bonuses, or you can take someone's gold that you can use to buy other armor. I just think that The Green Knight, one, is a fantastic film, but just because of how different it is and lends itself to, and I'm a big fan of mythology that I am, I think it lends itself to stories that we haven't seen before, told from the perspective of a wannabe knight in King Arthur's court. And I think you could do a lot of really cool stuff with that.
Yeah. I could see you could either do like Dynasty Warriors where it's huge battlefields with a squad of people taking on people, or it's like Dark Souls. And I think aesthetically I can see it being more of a Dark Souls game. I don't want that because I ain't playing it.
I'm not a fan of I don't want a Dark Souls game.
Yeah.
Like I don't want whatever knight you are to fight you can fight big monsters from. I'm not super versed in English folklore. But I imagine there's plenty of monsters you could fight, but I don't want it to be some huge hulking hard boss fight.
Yeah.
I want the game to be enjoyable, but it'd just be like a fun part history lesson, part English and like maybe you could tell it in like a kind of storybook way. Maybe there's some narration when it's like, I don't know. I think there's just a lot you can do with it depending on which way you want to lean. But I'm a big fan of epic fantasy open world games, and I think The Green Knight is a game that, if done right, could lend itself to some really cool stories and some really cool combat.
Have you seen like the free games this month for PlayStation?
Yeah, they're all terrible.
I mean, I took the SpongeBob one. Just, why not?
If I was gonna take one, it was gonna be that one.
Well, the one that's like Hood. It's a Robin Hood thing. I can see them doing that. Like it's just Arthur, and it's your band of your Knights of the Round Table, and you're doing. And I could see it a lot being kind of Shadow of War. Maybe,
I mean, I'd be
like
fine with
that.
it. I'm a big fan of Shadow War. I could see that. The Hood stuff, no, absolutely not. I mean, that's just like online.
Yeah,
it just seems like
Capture
bare
the
minimum.
Castle.
Yeah, no. But yeah, Arthur's sending you on missions, or Arthur's dead, and it's like who's gonna take up the throne, and like the world's in chaos. Camelot's been sacked or whatever. Maybe your mission is to take back Camelot, but you have to complete these other quests.
It'd be cool.
in
Like,
order to
what
do
if
so.
you and Arthur were on this quest far, far away? He dies, so you have Excalibur, and you're making your way back, and you're going through all these crazy adventures on your own. But by the time you get back, they're like, okay, did this guy kill Arthur just so he can get it, or is he the rightful heir? And then so you maybe the table is split.
Okay.
And like and like if
maybe
you're doing
based
the
on your morality choices.
yeah,
It's like okay. Very
and
cool.
so like we don't see how Arthur dies, so we are completely in the dark, and depending on our choices, then it goes, yes, you obviously killed Arthur because you made these decisions, and maybe some of them of like kill this villager to steal some food or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Maybe that goes, it's looked over because it's not that important, but because you answered a certain question with the town elder or something, that is more important than some of the other things. So it's like how you react to certain key moments in the game sways your meter one way or another.
Right.
Yeah, that'd be fun. There's a lot to do, and I think I've mentioned it before, but there's a King Arthur cartoon show that I used to watch, and it was a team of football players, and the quarterback was Arthur King, and they like fall through,
That's
and like
funny.
Lancelot's name is Lance,
Yeah, of
they
course.
fall through a portal, and it's a medieval world, and so they are the
King Arthur's Court, isn't that what it is?
No, that's a movie.
No, I know.
But and they all have like animal
Shields?
Yeah, it's like they have a shield, or it's on their chest. Like one person has a ram, and he pushes it, and like a big battering ram would come out, and that's his weapon.
Oh, cool.
I think you would dig the show, and I think if you watch it, you'd be like, I want a new modern remake of that, or a video game remake of that.
Right.
Because they all had a cool weapon and then an animal representation, and that's just cool.
All right.
All right, so that's our top 10 in no particular order.
No.
But there are some movies that get our honorable mentions.
Okay.
And we'll just go through those real quick because I don't necessarily have a lot to say about each one. But
maybe we should have started with these, but
maybe. But
this is the whirlpool, baby. We're all over the place.
We just mix it up. Because this is number 3. This is honorable mention. This is number 1. This is number 10. Yeah, who cares? We've said it before. We want a Batman Beyond game. Mm-hmm. It's gotta happen. I'll take no Superman game, no Wonder Woman game. I don't care what they make. Just give me Batman Beyond.
Yeah.
And did you know that in the comics there's there's so many different worlds in comics,
of course.
But they have like kind of moved the Batman Beyond timeline up. Mm-hmm. So I guess Batman gets found out, or Bruce Wayne gets found out to be Batman, and so he's in prison for all of his Batman crimes. And they're like, he made a suit that he said he would never touch because it's too powerful, and it's the Batman Beyond suit. So Terry McGinnis has broken in and gotten it, but it's still like this Batman, but
mm-hmm.
maybe 25 years in the future instead of being like 40, 50 years.
Right.
So Batman's older, but he's in prison and he's still buff as hell, but he's like maybe only 60 instead of being 100. So you get to have Batman Beyond fighting his classic rogues gallery still. Mm-hmm. There's still that attempt. And like Harley Quinn has a child with Joker, and it just seems like an interesting way of doing it. Like
you can still bring the old ones in while also bringing the new ones in.
Yeah, you don't have to go so far in the future and then have to explain, it's like, well, why is the Joker alive? Clone, nanotechnology, something, whatever. Sure. It's just happened a little bit earlier than so.
Okay. Well,
but that's a comic, not a video game.
It's funny you bring this up because I don't know why I was thinking about this earlier today, but with Batman Beyond, because in Batman Beyond, at least in the cartoon, he was just older, right? Like there was no reason for him to.
He gave up because he like had a heart attack, or like he was having a heart attack.
Right. No, but I mean like he's in his like 80s or 90s or plus. Like,
I think he's 100 years old.
Yeah, because I mean it's like in the future.
Yeah, I mean Barbara Gordon looks old. She looks in her 60s, and if she was 25 or whatever, that's at least 35 years in the future. Batman's usually around 40. I guess that only puts him at 75, but he's pretty frail in it.
Okay. I was just asking because I was like, I was wondering if at least you could do a storyline where Bruce was able to do so much for so long and like he's still buff or like kind of in shape despite being 100. It's like, what if he's just like microdosing the Lazarus pit?
He could be.
I thought like, oh, that'd be fun. It's like, it's not going to make him, I mean, it might make him crazy over time, but not to the same effect. But it's like, it's keeping him young and how it's like, he's taken so many injuries, like, regardless of how strong and how well trained he is, like he's taken so many stab wounds and gunshots and fallen from stuff. It's like there's no way his body isn't hurting by the time he's like 40. I mean, I think that's the one thing kind of like the Dark Knight Rises did right. Yeah. It's like he didn't even fight crime for that long, but his body still took the toll. Yeah. It's like, well, what if Batman has been secretly like he took some serum that he made through the Lazarus pit, and it's just been able to like keep him going.
Yeah,
it's like his form of adrenaline.
He takes a little bit from all of his villains. You know, you get a little Lazarus pit, a little bit of Bane's venom, maybe something that the Joker or Scarecrow concocted, maybe Mr. Freeze's technology, and he puts it all together to make him last a little bit longer. Makes sense. Why not?
Sorry, that was just a tangent that has nothing to do with the game.
We bring up Batman and we just go on a rant. But yeah, Batman Beyond, it's like you have the Arkham games, just skin it differently. Yeah. You're done.
The Arkham games in Batman Beyond, like put those together. You have a grand slam home run hit. I don't know. It's like I understand they did their trilogy, quadrilogy if you want to count Origins, but they did their trilogy and was like, this is the story you want to tell. It's over now. It's done. I get it, but Batman Beyond's just sitting there, and it's written itself. They have even Batman Beyond, cool villains. So I mean, we've thought this out so much. It's like I think at this point, if we could get a meeting with Rocksteady, I think they'd be like, these kids are on to something.
They would go, yeah, no shit. Of course we want to do Batman. Who doesn't want to do it? Get out of here, kids.
But
All right. So some of the other ones, I think these are kind of similar, and I think they both have had video games. What, Blade or Constantine? Like,
Okay.
Constantine seems, a no-brainer. You have holy water and special crosses and shrouds you burned, and it would just seem like a lot of RPGs where you're doing summons and spells and casting things, but you add in a little bit of gunplay in it with crazy monsters. Seems like a no-brainer.
I've always been interested in the concept of, angels and demons and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, it'd be cool if there was a open world game, because I don't know if we've ever seen anything really like that, or at least like if you did Days Gone, but with devils and angels and stuff, and some angels are good, some angels are bad, and some devils are just like, yeah, we work for the devil, but he's been kind of a dickhead recently, so we're devilish, so what do we care? I don't know. I think Constantine could lend itself to some cool stuff.
Like Batman has his detective mode, and since Constantine always sees all the dead, like he would have his like dead vision or whatever, and it'd wash across, and then you would see who has a demon inside, and maybe you got to chase him down. You got to perform an exorcism and pull that demon out. There's a lot you could do with that.
Yeah, I feel like exorcising demons would be one of those like side mission things in the open world. It's like, okay, I just want to level up a little bit. I'm just going to do this thing that has nothing to do with the main storyline. It's just like you get a call. It's like, oh, Bobby Joe needs exorcism, and like, all right, I'm on the way. And it's just another thing you can do.
One of the things I loved in the Warriors game is the pickpocketing and then spray painting, where like you go and feel for the vibrations on your joysticks. I can see that being the exorcism thing. You got to find the sweet spot to be able to pull them out and put them in a mirror and break the mirror. And, it'd be fun. Yeah. And I think Blade would kind of play the same, but it's just a little more, hack and slash. And
plus, I love. Oh, go. Sorry, go. I was just gonna say. Plus, I love any game that has an excuse to send you to hell, because I love interpretations of hell. I mean, Dante's Inferno is, probably the best one that we've seen. Yeah. But at least from the movie Constantine with Keanu Reeves, like that vision of hell is really cool. Yeah. What Dreams May Come. I mean, that's more. I mean, there's cool stuff in there, but it's not exactly like an action movie of What Dreams May Come.
What Dreams May Come, the video game.
The video game, for sure. I want to see that. But anyway, I just love to see like what people can do with the underworld. Yeah. So I think Constantine would be real sweet.
I have the Blob here, and I imagine that just being either like a rail shooter, where you're just constantly having to keep the Blob back, and you're moving with the military, and you're shooting cryo tanks to keep it back, or it's just kind of an open world thing where it's slowly coming after you, and you have to try to board up the windows or escape through this certain passage. I don't know how fun that would be.
Yeah, that feels like if you bought a Call of Duty game and there's like Blob mode, and it's, instead of the zombie mode where they're trying to break into the house and you board it up, it's just the Blob. Yeah. I think that's a fun level, but I don't think you make a whole game out of that. Okay.
See, that's why I have you around, Steve. Yeah. I pitch in, you knock it down.
There might be a great game there, but I don't have the brain capacity, at least right now, to come up with it.
I have Eight-Legged Freaks. I just think fight like giant spiders that hasn't been used in a game. That would be pretty fun.
I have a piggyback off of that. Not so much an Eight-Legged Freaks, but what if you did The Mist?
Okay.
Because I think, one, you lend yourself to more different creatures to fight, and I think the mist adds a creepy element versus just like you walking around town, there's just giant spiders everywhere. Yes, giant spiders are scary, but what if these are spiders that shoot acidic webs or whatever?
And how scary it'd be, like, it'd be very Silent Hill, that first one especially, with a lot of fog, and you're trying to get to the next house just so you can get inside and board the windows, and then something just comes barreling at you through the mist, and especially if you have good mist effects,
or like or you just see like the outline of something and you think that it becomes something else, or I don't know.
You think it's two smaller things, but it's actually the feet of something even bigger.
Oh, shit.
And you gotta like hide, and there is some stealth when you're outside. You gotta be quiet, and sometimes you gotta run and kill things. I think the mist could be fun.
Oh, that'd be real cool. Man.
I have From Dusk Till Dawn. I don't know how big of a game you could really make that. But just like Blade, I just want to kill some vampires. We don't have a lot of cool killing vampire games. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why not?
I'm trying to think. There's probably some out there.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
But I mean, I tried playing that vampire game.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah,
fun,
great concept.
Great concept, yeah.
Yeah,
But
you kill one person and it may cause a cascading thing where a plague happens and everyone dies and the city goes down. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff, but unlike Disco Elysium, I wasn't as invested in that story. It's like Disco Elysium does a lot for these characters in the world, where Vampire didn't as much.
Yeah, it was the first game where I played that had like that much dialogue, and I was just like, I'm like trying to interact with as many people as possible. It's like I don't care. Like 10 hours in, I was like, let's wrap this. Like I just want to like be a vampire and drink blood or kill things. It's like I just want to have fun, and it was just too much dialogue for that kind of game.
I think this one would be a lot of fun. Ghost Rider. And you do it a little bit of Road Rage, a little bit of Devil May Cry. I think you would have your fun driving moments where you're whipping dudes and you can, drive up on walls and on top of buildings and turn that garbage truck into a Ghost Rider Hell Truck version, and you're mowing guys down. And then you have your action beats that would be a bit more like original God of War or Devil May Cry, where you're just whipping your chain, shooting fire, penance stare, and all that. I think there is a Ghost Rider game, but it wasn't well received. It just seems kind of like an easy one. I mentioned The Thing. I just think it needs a remake, an update. Being able to, do I trust this guy or do I not, and having it be a little more of a mystery and your choices have lasting effects. I think we needed an HD remake.
Okay.
Pacific Rim, there is a fighting game, Pacific Rim, and it looks fine, but
yeah, I think we've never had a really good kaiju game, and I know it's kind of hard to do. Just because
you want that sense of weight and destruction, so everything has to go a little slower. But that fighting style isn't nearly as interesting as a Street Fighter or Marvel vs. Capcom frenetic energy.
And I think the other problem is, like, oftentimes these are set in big old cities, and the cities don't look all that great. Like, they focus on the character designs, and it's like, oh, okay, isn't it fun to just punch big things? But it's like, you really want to feel like, okay, if I pick up this thing and slam it, like, I want to be able to like grab its head and like drag it down the side of a building, and all that crumbles in like real time and like stays there. And like, I want to be able to see, like, as I'm fighting, helicopters flying around, and I want to see people scatter on the ground, and like there needs to be some emotional weight into like the destruction. It's like, do I want to try and like not destroy as much as possible, or is like, do I want to destroy it because it's kind of like the fun of the game?
Yeah, I agree completely. And this is, I think, one of those situations where a wrestling mechanic works a bit better, because you can grab someone, push him against the building, and like in a wrestling game, you throw someone against the turnbuckle. Well, I have the option of doing like a high strike or a low strike, or do I put them up higher so I flip them off? Do I step back and run and smash into the turnbuckle? Like, every little section of the ring, you have a lot of options of how you interact with them. Is it going to be a physical hit? Is it going to be a grapple sort of submission thing? Am I going to pick them up? Am I going to slam them back down? And I think that would work for a kaiju type game. Or now that they're backed up against the building, do I kick them in the chest and let the building fall down on them? Do I grab them and like whip them back and slam them into it? There's just a lot of different things on the ground you can pick up, and do you hit them with it? Do you take the guy and smack him into the thing? Yeah, there's a lot. It's just that sort of fighting has to be a little bit slower, a little more methodical, and I think people don't care that much. Yeah. They just want punch, 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 and it looks weird when you see this giant robot doing just these really fast things.
Yeah, well, the other thing it'd be cool to customize your mech in any way you wanted to. Like with maybe you want a sword guy, maybe you want a gun guy, maybe your mech, you want its special ability to be flight, so you can have the advantage on ones that don't fly, but maybe you have the disadvantage to ones that do fly. And like,
if you get hit while you're in the air, you take more damage because you hit the ground.
Yeah. And what I liked about Pacific Rim, the films, is they had their big city fights that looked pretty. But, they also went, like, underwater and stuff, or had battles in the ocean. Like, it'd be cool to, like, okay, maybe I want to try and... Maybe part of the game is, like, human life preservation. So it's like, okay, I need to get this thing away from the city. But, you can't just, like, run out into the water and expect this thing to chase you. Maybe it's, like, I have to like pick this thing up, use my rocket boost, like grapple it, and try and like shoot myself into the water
Sure.
to try and keep it away.
Or at least get it closer, and then when you step back, you shoot a bunch of missiles, piss it off so it runs closer, then you do a dodge, chuck them in the ocean.
It also would be a cool game to do like with 2 players. Because we don't really get 2-player games too often anymore.
And you're controlling each side of the map?
No, I'm not necessarily saying that.
Okay.
It's like, I know that's part of the movie is like there's 2 people inside. I think that'd just be the storyline.
Yeah.
But I just think it'd be fun because they often, it's not one mech suit. It's like a team of mech suits go after. It's like, okay, I think it'd be cool. It's like, oh, I can play with a friend and they fight a different monster while I fight this one.
Sure.
And maybe, we combine our weapons to form the super weapon. And
Sure.
some stupid shit. I don't know. But I think Pacific Rim would be fun if you could do it right. I'd love to see a really awesome kaiju game. It's just, I think the problem is like, it's just all boss fights and like what's the...
Yeah.
You're not really getting a ton of diversity unless you're fighting like a bunch of smaller ones until you get to like the big one, which I don't know if I'd be invested in that. So.
I had this idea because I wanted almost like a fighting game with either lightsabers or samurai swords, but make it a little more realistic. Because, you swipe someone with a lightsaber, they're dead instantly, just one hit. So what if instead of having combos and move sets, it goes, okay, fight, and then it's just rock, paper, scissors. Okay? So then you pick one and I pick one, and it doesn't tell us our answers necessarily. So I say like, I pick rock, you pick paper. Okay, you won. So then what are you going to do? You're going to like high attack, medium attack, low attack, whatever, and then you choose it. And then since I lost, what do I choose? Do I try to block? Do I try to bum rush? And I have options as well. And then it goes to the next, rock, paper, scissors. Oh, well, I won this one. So my thing successfully happened and I was able to block your sword. And you keep doing that for a while. And then afterwards, it plays your fight. And so you get to see this like really cinematic thing without just being button mashes. So, we may do the rock, paper, scissors and you say head strike and I say like dodge, but I fail. Boom, match is over. Head strike, I'm done. But if we have a really good back and forth, you could have this really cinematic fighting that isn't based on button mashing.
I think that's a cool experiment. I don't think that's a fun game. I think it'd be like, oh wow, that's essentially attuned to you and I playing Smash Brothers, setting everything to CPU and just letting them go at it, and then just like whatever happens, happens.
Sure.
And just like us taking bets on who we think would win in this fight.
Yeah, I think it's a little different because we still have say in the outcome of this computer fight.
That's true.
And I kind of imagine it more of like a stunt, not stunt performance, but like a choreography game almost. Like we could actually tell each other what we want to pick so we can see exactly what sort of choreography you want to do. And like, oh, I'm going to do a jumping strike. You pick roll away. Okay, roll away. And then we are able to just craft this really interesting fight scene based on these button imprompts.
Okay. Still don't know if that's a game or of a simulator kind of thing, but I'm into it.
The last thing that I have would be a really good Terminator game. We've gotten lots and lots of Terminator games in all different styles, but I want to play through all the movies, and I think it could almost be fun to have it a bit open world and have it a little bit like Resident Evil 2, where the remake of Resident Evil 2, especially when you have Mr. X slowly stalking you through the house. So say you have this Terminator that is always on the move trying to hunt you down, and you get to choose, well, do we hang up on this rooftop to try to trap him there and push him off, or do we go to this bunker and try to hide? And so there would be a story mode, but then you could have can you survive the Terminator until you're able to find the means of destroying it? And maybe it's dropping a car on it, maybe it's luring it into a cement truck or whatever. You get to choose how you take out this Terminator, but you just constantly have this thing that is coming after you no matter what. So you can be in the middle of crafting something, and if he happens to be close, he busts through that wall and he gets you, because you weren't prepared. You didn't take the time to look out to see where that Terminator was coming from, or using your tech to track him and things like that. I think there's a fun Terminator game that's more than just the war with Skynet in the future with big laser guns.
Yeah, but see, I kind of want to play that game.
Well, there's like 6 of them you can choose from, so
Is
go
there?
for it. Yeah, there's a bunch of
Are they
Terminator
any
games.
good, though?
The most recent one, I think, got some okay praise.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then you have your rail shooters where it's like just an arcade game and you're just firing randomly.
Yeah, I mean, I've had fun with those.
Yeah.
I think we had the Terminator game at
our theater.
At our theater that we worked at together,
Yeah.
and I think you and I might have played. Either it was you or I, or you and our other friend who looks like us.
I know me and him went through the Alien game.
Yeah,
we spent $20 to beat that. That was $10 each. Actually, it was $9.75. But I don't know if I went through the game with you, but I'm sure we played.
Yeah, I think we played. We definitely didn't beat it. It was one of
Yeah.
those things where it's like, okay, we put enough money into this. We don't
Yeah,
have to-
but there has to be a point. Like, you're playing Time Crisis, you either put $1 in or you put enough in to beat it. If you put in $6, well, you're only going to get like 2/3 of the way through. Why'd you even waste your money if you're not going to be willing to go all the way? So I generally only play those games that either it's like, this is my last buck and I want to waste it real quick,
Yeah.
or I'm going to beat this game. Because those games are made so they're not meant to be beaten. You know, they want you to just plug it up, plug all your money in, and of course that's what I end up doing. But I'm going to get that ending.
Yep.
All right, well, that's our list of movies that should be video games. I'm sure there's a million more.
Yeah, I mean, it took me like 10 minutes to come up with my list, and it was just like, oh, that one's obvious, that one's obvious,
Yeah.
that one's obvious, and then I sprinkled in ones that it's like, oh, you know what, this one's just for me. But yeah, I guarantee there's probably 100 movies that'd be like,
Yeah.
that would be an easy game to make.
Absolutely. So if you guys have any ideas what you think a great video game, or I'm sorry, a great video game adaptation of a movie, let us know. You could hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, at WRPL Podcast, or WRPLpodcast@gmail.com if you want to send us an email with questions, comments, concerns. As always, I'm Ben.
And I'm Steve.
Have a good night.